amendment be agreed to, and I call the member for Longman.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I acknowledge the comments of the former Speaker, the member for Jagga. I do think she is right that members on both sides of the chamber believe that youth unemployment in particular is a big challenge for our nation. But the question is, what do you actually do about it? And let's put it into perspective, the challenge that we face. Under the Labor government, the unemployment rate for young people rose from 9.9% to 12.7%. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, that's an additional 55,000 young Australians that didn't have a job after 6 years of Labor. So in the chamber we can agree that youth unemployment is a big issue, but the reality is we have very different approaches when it comes to what we can do about it. And Mr Deputy Speaker, in the early days of government and prior to September's resounding election victory, the Coalition could not have spoken louder or more clearly about its determination to deliver a stronger Australia built on more opportunity and more jobs. While we are realistic about the challenges, we remain undaunted. The Howard government gifted the former Labor government a $20 billion surplus and no net debt. By contrast, the outgoing Labor administration left this coalition government with $123 billion in deficits and $460 billion in projected gross debt over the next 4 years. Without changes, Mr Deputy Speaker, the budget will remain in deficit until 2023-24, and the debt will raise to $667 billion. This equates to $29,000 for each and every Australian. Mr Deputy Speaker, we cannot go on like this, and the Coalition won't let it continue. We've successfully confronted Labor debt and deficit before, and we will do it again. A big part of this solution will come from refiring the economy so that businesses are expanding, prospering and employing more Australians. Mr Deputy Speaker, in my electorate of Longman, the great local employers are small business, retail, tourism and light industry. They need the confidence to grow and invest and create jobs. But they couldn't do this under Labor, while being punitively taxed and regulated. In fact, Mr Deputy Speaker, what they require from their government is freedom. Freedom from the stifling cost and overheads that stem from too much bureaucracy and over-regulation. They need fewer taxes and lower taxes. As far as possible, they want government out of their lives, which is not only a fair request, but an economically sound one. That's why the Coalition government is moving to scrap the carbon tax and why it has already eliminated most of the already 100 announced but not enacted Labor government tax changes. Together, these actions will mean lower taxes, less paperwork and more certainty. This government is also unshackling businesses of at least $1 billion of red tape and green tape every single year. And I'm actively working with local businesses to secure our share of these savings. As part of my commitment, the member for Kooyong and Prime Ministerial Parliamentary Secretary responsible for deregulation came to Longman shortly after last September's election to meet with local businesses about their individual cases of excessive regulation. With that red tape gone, they will be able to breathe and grow again, ultimately employing more locals. Mr Deputy Speaker, my community is a growth region, and that's why new commercial and residential projects are crucial. And I, along with the state government, have been a strong advocate of the North East Business Park project, which will spark economic activity and create 27,000 new jobs. Mr Deputy Speaker, building better infrastructure is another productivity-increasing measure. In my electorate, that means opportunities blossoming with the Coalition's $8.5 billion Bruce Highway upgrade. Between the Sunshine Coast and the Longman electorate region of the Moreton Bay, the Bruce Highway is the connector for employment, for tourism and many students of the University of the Sunshine Coast. It also carries a large number of commuters from our region to Brisbane. With $3.3 billion of the Coalition's Bruce Highway project to be targeted from upgrades from the Pine River through to the Sunshine Coast, we have a long-term strategic plan that makes travel safer and unlocks the potential of our area. Mr Deputy Speaker, $50 million has been allocated for the planning and the design of 6 lanes between Caboolture and Caloundra. The Bruce Highway improvements are occurring in tandem with the development program for Caloundra South and Caboolture West. All up, a huge shot in the arm for the growth of our region. These initiatives, Mr Deputy Speaker, underscore a plan for the economy that is strong, that is multi-layered and will reboot local economies, removing physical, psychological and administrative barriers so that once again hope can float and jobs can flow. But it's a plan the people of Longman have been waiting for far too long. Under the previous 6 years of the former Labor government, unemployment, especially youth unemployment, soared throughout my local region, as did the cost of living. Fuelled by the carbon tax, gas prices jumped by 63%. Electricity prices climbed by 93%. Water and sewage bills were up 63%. Education costs rose by 39%, and medical and hospital costs increased by 46%. The Coalition's scrapping of the carbon tax will bring immediate relief to households by cutting off the tax's reach into almost every aspect of daily life, including grocery and transport costs. However, while abolishing the carbon tax, we will keep the compensation regime of tax cuts and pension and benefit increases. So that's tax cuts and pension increases without a carbon tax. And we will take pressure off public hospitals by restoring the private health insurance rebate as soon as we responsibly can, saving more money for everyone. Mr Deputy Speaker, our cost-cutting jobs growth plan has an eye on the future. The stark fact to emerge from Australia's ageing population is that this generation will be paying to support the retirement of the previous one on an unprecedented scale. The percentage of the population aged 75 or over is expected to rise from about 6.4% to 14.4% of the population. Mr Deputy Speaker, while the values, the attitudes and the choices of baby boomers and Generation Y might seem worlds apart, both sides must tackle the issue for mutual benefit. Mr Deputy Speaker, we are ultimately on the cusp of a demographic superbubble. When the baby boomers leave the workforce, they will take away not only their skills, but their tax-paying capacity. While the preceding generation produced 2.5 million retirees, we now have 4 million Australians on the brink of retirement, about to draw on age pensions, pharmaceutical benefits and other government assistance. Our current immigration rate is insufficient to compensate for a shift of this magnitude. The 1990s annual permanent migration intake of about 100,000 has increased by merely 90,000. Growth nowhere near strong enough to fill the breach caused by the ebb in retirement. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, there are very good reasons for making a start now on this key area of public policy. As the Productivity Commission highlighted, if the pension age is not recalibrated or no other solution is found, taxes would have to increase by 21% to pay for the ageing of the population. In fact, by the turn of the century, Australians will count more 100-year-olds than babies. So what do we do? Mr Deputy Speaker, the answer must strongly accommodate rising the productive capacity of the economy. If more people are in better jobs, earning higher real wages, they pay more tax. So we must build a vibrant, deregulated economy which is part of a liberalised trade environment. Mr Deputy Speaker, I am proud to be part of a government with an ambitious deregulation agenda, driven by a whole-of-government approach, and I commend the Prime Minister, ably assisted by the member for Kooyong, for taking personal responsibility for the deregulation of the economy. Increasing our nation's productivity requires us to recognise that it is private enterprise, not the government, which creates wealth and prosperity and jobs. In an area where the market is not best placed to do it, the government must take the lead in productive investment. That's why the Coalition has such a strong infrastructure agenda, and I note the Assistant Minister in the House. It's why we as a government have spoken about opening up the north of Australia and why we should talk more about the possibilities of a sovereign wealth fund. While the previous generation saw a massive increase in productivity with women entering the workforce, future generations will not enjoy the same demographic advantage. Undoubtedly, women entering the workforce triggered the biggest productivity gain of the past 30 years. For this generation, there is no equivalent untapped labour force stimulus. Generation Y and successive generations will grow up with the majority of women already in the workforce. We will have to take advantage of new technology and expand into new markets. Future generations will require constant upskilling, further training, and will be willing to turn themselves into a more creative workforce to achieve similar productivity gains of previous generations. In the meantime, landmark policies such as the Abbott government's paid parental leave scheme have been designed to allow women to stay in the workforce. So effectively, PPL is another productivity increasing measure. It's an economic driver and, as such, should be viewed as a workforce entitlement, not a welfare payment. Mr Deputy Speaker, the economic and social challenges of today and on the horizon demand that we grow a substantive workforce, as large and as robust as possible. An important part of that equation is recognising the damaging effects of unemployment and doing everything in our power to diminish it. Wherever we can, we need to help people to find a job and to keep a job, so that lives are lifted up while the cycle of welfare dependency will struggle for traction. This government has faith in our young people. We want to help them avert an early slide into welfare dependency and at the same time reward positive, pro-work attitudes and endeavour. That is why we have thoughtfully considered and now introduced the legislation which is the business of this debate, the Social Security Increased Employment Participation Bill 2014. It is an investment to help the long-term unemployed, particularly young job seekers, find and keep a job. The first element will be aptly known as the Job Commitment Bonus. Eligible job seekers aged 18 to 30 will be paid $2,500 if they can secure a job and remain in continuous employment and off income support for 12 months. These very same job seekers will be eligible for an additional $4,000 if they remain in continuous employment for a further 12 months. That's 2 years in total. Mr Deputy Speaker, this is about incentive and reward and fostering good work habits, which is not only builds the skills and income, contributing to individual and national wealth, but raises personal pride and confidence, positively impacting relationships, lifestyle and happiness. Part 2 of this bill acknowledges that many job seekers are dissuaded from employment opportunities by the prohibitive cost of relocation. The relocation assistance to take up a job measure directly addresses this conflict, providing financial support to eligible job seekers who have been receiving New Start, youth allowance or parenting payments for at least the preceding 12 months to relocate for employment or an apprenticeship. They will receive up to $6,000 for relocating to a regional area to take up a job. Up to $3,000 will be paid to eligible job seekers who relocate from a regional area to a metropolitan area to begin a job. This $3,000 will also be available to eligible job seekers who move from one capital city with higher unemployment to another with lower unemployment in order to take up working employment. Mr Deputy Speaker, unemployment can have a corrosive effect on individuals, families and society at large. Over time, its debilitating features amount to far more than economic consequences. Doing nothing to encourage the work-ready but long-term unemployed into workforce is cruelty, not compassion. This government is obliged to do what it can to provide real incentives and assistance to encourage job seekers to find suitable work and stay off welfare. It's part of our overall plan to build a stronger, more productive and diverse economy with lower taxes and smaller government, an economy that delivers higher real incomes and better services, an economy, Mr Deputy Speaker, that ultimately means more jobs. I commend the bill to the House.